Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Shh. Good evening. My name is Caroline Bowman, and I am the director of Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum. And we are using every chair we own for tonight's event. And we've actually never had this format before. So welcome to all 170 of you. Yes, all right. And please admire my Tatley tattoo, which tells me the time and that we need to start on time. As many of you know, the mammoth renovation we just completed was years in the making, with 3 years of closure for Cooper Hewitt. During these years, we did a whole lot more than renovate the mansion. We thought long and hard about everything, from the museum's name, to the gallery experience, to the ticket, to how best to use every single one of our spaces. We also planned 5 important publications, which were managed by our fabulous director of publications, Pamela Horn, who is somewhere in this sea of people tonight. Raise your hand, Pam. She's hiding. She's hiding way in the back. One of them, Aha to Zigzag, was born out of my desire to have a unique book featuring items from our collection that would delight the 4-year-old as well as the 94-year-old alike. We suspected that Maira Kalman, designer and author extraordinaire, would do the trick. So I trekked down to the village one snowy day 3 years ago, and she opened her door and her arms and said, "Caroline, I just baked some pound cake based on Thomas Jefferson's recipe. Would you like some?" And I said, "Sure." And I think I had about 3 pieces because it was so delicious. But it was so Maira, and we spent several hours there and had a wonderful time together. Anyway, this led to one marvelous relationship, an incredible book that is charming readers far and wide. It also led to our realizing that Maira was the perfect person to curate our opening Collection Selects exhibition on the first floor, which I hope you all saw this evening. And one of the highlights of the exhibition is Lincoln's gold pocket watch, which was made to tick again after 150 years, thanks to a brilliant team of conservators, some of which you'll see tonight, I think. To celebrate this amazing feat, Cooper Hewitt then commissioned Maira's very good friend, Nico Muhly, the internationally renowned composer, to actually create music inspired by the sound and other objects on view. So opening week, we actually had Nico performing with a whole team of musicians. It was unforgettable. It was an amazing opening week, emphasizing that design is everywhere. It was a multi-layered collaboration, the exhibition, the installation, the film. Gael Towey was here capturing Maira's process all along the way. And the two of them practically moved into the museum, with Gael maneuvering her intrepid crew around delicate objects and complex exhibition installations and lots of noise, and doing it all with great verve and a wonderful smile in order to catch some incredible moments. So you're really in for a terrific treat tonight, and to keep things moving, I'm very proud to introduce Caitlin Condell, Cooper Hewitt's terrific curatorial assistant for drawings, prints, and graphic design, who worked side by side with Maira for many, many months, hip to hip. So over to you, Caitlin.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm so pleased to welcome you all here today to the premiere of Gael Towey's film, Maira Kalman, My Favorite Thing. If you're not already familiar with Gael's work, you're definitely in for a treat. Gael is a passionate storyteller whose documentary series, Portraits and Creativity, offers a glimpse into the world of masterful artists, allowing us to eavesdrop on their processes and delight in their creations. Among the artists Gail has profiled are singer-songwriter Roseanne Cash, jewelry designer Gabriella Kiss, painter and sculptor Sheila Berger, National Design Award nominee Natalie Channon, and of course, Maira Kalman. Maira Kalman, My Favorite Things, is Gail's second film about Maira. It is a testament to Maira's creativity that her work with Cooper Hewitt demanded its own film, and we are grateful to the Smithsonian Channel for their support of this project. Prior to devoting herself to filmmaking, Gail was a creative director at Martha Stewart Living Omnimedia. In 1990, she helped launch Martha Stewart Living magazine, and under her creative direction, the magazine won numerous industry awards. In addition to designing the inaugural issue, Gail initiated the magazine's distinct and iconic visual style and helped spearhead the launch of 5 more magazine titles, as well as several product businesses. In 2000, Gail's work was exhibited at Cooper Hewitt's National Design Triennial for product and packaging design. And in 2014, she was awarded the prestigious AIGA medal. Gael Towey and Co. was established in 2012 to create moving video profiles that explore what it means to be an artist, as told in her subject's own words. As I suspect everyone here knows, Maira Kalman is the author of numerous books for children and adults, including Ooh La La, Max in Love, The Principles of Uncertainty, and the illustrated Elements of Style. She is also the author of Looking at Lincoln, a beautiful tribute to our nation's 16th president. As Caroline mentioned, Maira's admiration and love of Abraham Lincoln inspired the loan of both the pocket watch and also Abraham Lincoln's funeral pall from the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History. So we could think of no better occasion to celebrate Maira and her collaboration with Gail than the anniversary of Lincoln's birth. While Maira is perhaps best known for writing and her illustrations, she is always trying something new. In 2013, she made her dancing debut as the duck in Isaac Mizrahi's production of Peter and the Wolf. I encourage you all to go home tonight and watch Gail's earlier film about Maira, which includes footage of this absolutely remarkable performance. As you will see tonight, Maira brought her unique vision and infectious enthusiasm to the entire process of putting together her exhibition. For everyone at Cooper Hewitt, working with Maira has been a joy. We were thrilled that our collection inspired not only the children's book Aha to Zigzag, but also a book for adults, My Favorite Things, that HarperCollins published in conjunction with the exhibition's opening. As Maira describes it, the book is an exhibition catalog sandwiched between a memoir, and it beautifully captures the objects on view upstairs in the Nancy and Edwin Marks Gallery. I want to thank Tatley, the whole team, for generously providing a selection of their fabulous temporary tattoos for the evening, including my gold party watch. It tells me the time is always party. Tatley is in the process of producing a temporary tattoo designed by Maira, and it will soon be available for purchase on their website as well as in our shop. Finally, I want to thank the entire staff of Cooper Hewitt for making the many facets of Maira's projects at the museum come to fruition. Thank you. We're going to start the film in just a moment, so I want to remind all 170 of you to shut off your cell phones. Thank you.
I was invited by the Cooper Hewitt Museum to curate a show based on their collection. The show is about life and death, loosely, as everything is. And it's about the rituals and the memories that we have related to all the objects, what we do with our time on this earth, and how those mundane objects and inform so much of what we do and so much of what we remember and love. The name of the show is Maira Kalman Selects, and I have tens of thousands of objects, 40 plus pieces that I thought told a story that made me delirious with joy, usually. If you were to go through the show, you would experience probably a range of emotions, from delight to sorrow to humor and curiosity and discovery. So my criteria was an emotional content when I would look at the piece, but of course I'm also aware of shape and form and color and material.
Andrew and Louise Carnegie built the Carnegie Mansion between 1899 and 1902. Here at Cooper Hewitt, we like to think that if Andrew Carnegie were alive today, he'd be very proud that the house is in the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum, inspiring people through design and empowering people through design.
This exhibition has been a voyage for me, and it's taken a lot of time, so clearly things have changed during that time. One thing is I broke my arm, so doing the thing that I love best, which is to walk around the city. I've written and illustrated 2 books that go along with the exhibition. One of them is for children. It's called Aha to Zigzag. The other book is for adults. It's called My Favorite Things, and it's basically a catalog sandwiched between 2 parts. One is a memoir and one is a rumination about life and love and things. I started with memories that were very, very important to me from my childhood and stories that I heard that I wasn't part of. One of them was that my mother, in her little town of Sluch in Belarus, fell into the river and was saved by her grandfather's very long white beard. And another memory is where my father fell off the terrace in our apartment in Tel Aviv wearing a gray suit, and nothing happened to him. He fell to the ground and he was fine. So this is basically a love story between Toscanini's pants and my mother, Sarah. In 1937, Toscanini came to conduct the Israeli Philharmonic, and we believe that he wore these pants to conduct. At the same time, my mother was also in Tel Aviv, and I imagine that if Toscanini was walking down the street and ran into my mother, he'd fall madly in love with her. And I would be Maira Toscanini. But that's not what happened, but I like to think about that. In an amazing moment of history, Toscanini's pants, these very pants went up for auction, and I won them, and I own them, and they're part of the exhibition. When I look at the pieces in the show, the relationships between ancient work and modern work is very connected. People made them, people designed them, human hands, human eyes. And the question always becomes, what do you look at to inspire you to go on to the future? What are you going to do next? Hopefully, you begin, as I begin my work, with an empty brain and just allow whatever impressions that happen to be there flow in. The show begins with this face, this embroidery of we think it's a man, peevish, disappointed, annoyed, maybe sad. This piece is 5th to 7th century AD. It's Egyptian. It's one of my favorite pieces in the show and makes me feel as if we're kind of being honest from the beginning. And it's full of questions and emotions, and I think that's a good way to begin a show about design and life. I wanted the vitrines to be pieces of furniture that were transformed. So I thought, wouldn't it be lovely to have a bed in the room? And there you could think about how we need to rest, how we need to sleep, what do we dream about, and what do we yearn for? I think it looks, very sad and good. I drew a picture of a bed, and it turned out that it was this bed that I found, and it's a 100-year-old French army cot that folds. I think there's nothing better than getting into bed, except for getting out of bed. You get dressed, you decide who you are and what your fashion is, and that's always a decision. So I chose 18th century breeches. This cap is 13th to 14th century Egyptian. The embroidery and the quilting and the metallic gold thread that's in it, it's a tremendously complicated labor. and it is believed that it was used as a burial cap. So it adds another element of mystery and pathos to the object. This perfect little pair of slippers, I've always wanted to slippers basically, and to go to a few balls maybe. It's delicate and just perfect. So we all use with bows on them. The Rietveld chair, which is not incredibly comfortable but beloved by everybody, was designed around 1930, and it's a painting that I use in the children's book, From Aha to Zigzag, because you're zigzagging through life and many things can happen to you, but it's always good to have this chair as an anchor. And sitting next to the Rietveld chair is a cantharos from 6th to 7th century BC, but it looks to me like a Mickey Mouse cap. The Cooper Hewitt is a Smithsonian institution, and of course they have a beautiful Abraham Lincoln archive, and I fell madly in love with Lincoln, as many people do. So I was able to go to Washington to the Smithsonian, and Harry Rubenstein, who's the curator of history, was able to help me a lot with my research.
We have this incredibly interesting collection of Lincoln material that came to the Smithsonian as early as 1867, shortly after all the conspiracy trials were finished. These include everything from our very famous hat that he wore to his pocket watch.
I chose the pall that hung over his coffin, a black, tasseled, beautiful piece of fabric, and his timepiece, which volumes about who he was and the relationship that we had to him. The show for the Cooper Hewitt is an incredible convergence of things that I love. I love Lincoln, music, Nico's music, and for me the most important thing is to create a place where you're kind of undoing whatever you're doing, that you're just sort of in this strange environment, and all of a sudden music wafts at you, and music that is Lincoln's pocket watch ticking, which hasn't ticked in 150 years, and I think will never tick again. So I think this is one of those extraordinary emotional opportunities that connects you to history and dreaming and the future, and I think it'll be really great.
One of the things about everything Maira does is that there's a sense of sort of melancholy and joy, sort of simultaneously existing in a single thing. Maira loves like an ugly dog or a beautiful bucket or something that's that's simultaneously functional, practical, hideous, and gorgeous. That sentiment is something that's been part of my own work, like since I've known her, really. And in our collaborations together, it's always been, you access a sort of emotional core of a thing, and from there make something sort of radiant, and what you'll end up with is something, again, simultaneously sort of joyful and melancholy. I mean, for me, it's like, it feels like Lincoln was a sort of curator of a time of enormous change, and also someone who was in a constant process of negotiation, and a constant process of compromise, and a constant process of translating something from one side to the other. It's really about just taking this sort of repetitive motion of the ticking of a clock, and stylizing it, and turning it into something that sort of feels like it was already happening, continue to happen for a long time. So it's not it. I think the piece is the thing that shouldn't feel like it has a beginning and an ending.
This is a 16th century engraving. It's full of fanciful flourishes and swirls. And when Nico looked at it, he felt that it was inspirational in terms of it being gibberish. So that's the piece that he wrote. I think that everybody is aware of the dualities that exist in life, how humor sorrow, that we're not in one static state, and that we all live in a state of duality, which keeps changing all the time. So it's a sticky wicket to be alive. When my mother died, I started to embroider what turned out to be a mourning sampler, and found that in the meditation of working, I was able to channel my grief into something that was productive and creative and life-affirming. So I created 4 panels using the quote of Goethe from Faust, which expressed so acutely and so accurately how I felt. And the ability to spend time is the healing process. So the creativity that's put into that is something that regenerates life. So here's the quote. So, I feel a sense of dread. Tear after tear is falling. My rigid heart is tenderly unmanned. What I possess seems something far away, and what had disappeared proves real. Which is very true. The final vitrine in the show is, appropriately enough, about death. And of course, with death, the finality makes you think of time and how much time we all have in this world. And one of the most poignant pieces in the show is a mourning sampler made by a woman for her family. Very elaborate embroidery.
Here it is.
Lincoln's in the room.
Yes. This is Lincoln's fine gold pocket watch. To me, it really, it has this wonderful weight and feel. It's sort of the Rolex of its day. Lincoln purchased this, after finally getting paid from a railroad case.
I always do that when I get paid.
This is probably the most expensive thing that Lincoln ever bought for himself personally. And it's, one of those symbols you can imagine. As, a successful trial lawyer, every time you pull it out of your pocket, you open up the dial, you're telling all of your colleagues that you're a success.
And he knew what time dinner was.
And then there's this other story of the watch. The story is that when Lincoln goes to Washington, he needs to have his watch cleaned, and so he sends it to a local jewelry store. And while the workman is working on the watch, the owner of the shop into the workroom and says, "Fort Sumter has been attacked, the war has begun." At that moment, he's holding Lincoln's watch. So he opens it up and he inscribes a message inside, which says, "On this day, Fort Sumter has been attacked. Thank God we have a government." And, he seals that message that we didn't know about until 2009 when we opened up the watch to discover that he had done this. The watchmaker, George Thomas, had agreed that if the watch was ever available, he'd be willing to clean the watch for us. And we all went up and we, gathered around as he took apart and showed us, and then put it all back together and then wound the watch, which was exciting in so many different ways. There's very few sounds from the past that you can hear again. And I personally wanted to hear the sound that Lincoln heard every day as he wound his watch and put it in his pocket. When you hear the ticking, it's a nice, clear, steady pace. It's got its own sort of beauty in its sound.
We made it through the entire book.
What is the most precious thing? Time. And the time is too little.
First of all, I want to thank Caroline Bauman, who told you the story about going to Myra's house and deciding on doing a book, and who knew that it would turn into a multimedia extravaganza. And so true to the Cooper Hewitt's mission to take an analog idea and make it grow and grow and grow and turn into something even bigger, which is very good. And Caitlin, who was by our side the entire time, the patience of Job, and she's all things Hewitt as far as I can tell. And I also want to thank Maira and Nico, of course. Maira, who broke her arm in the middle of this and showed up for work every time we were scheduled to shoot, and came out with so many beautiful phrases and thoughts and ideas, even though she was kind of in pain. So she was a trooper on every level, so thank you so much. And for introducing us to Nico, I mean, to have something where you have incredible music and incredible visuals and beautiful, luxurious artwork, you know, it's a privilege for me to be able to put it together. Chris Baker, the cinematographer, Cynthia Clegg, my wonderful editor, who has a great sense of timing, as you can see. And thank you to my husband, Stephen, who I never show anything to until the very last stages, because I desperately need his objectivity and wisdom to come at the end. So thank you for that. And thanks all of you for coming tonight and helping us celebrate Lincoln's birthday. Oh, and thank you also to Tina, who's putting everybody. Tina and Maira are going to be doing a whole collection together, so that's great news.
So I'm going to ask Maira and Gael a couple questions, and then we really want to open it up to the audience. There's a microphone up here, so if you have a question, I hope you'll come up and line up at the mic, and we will take them as soon as you're ready. Gael came into this process about a year ago, maybe a little bit more. So I want to step back even further, because when Maira first found out that she was going to curate this show, Caroline told her, it feels like 20 years ago, you found out that we had 210,000 objects in the Cooper Hewitt collection, and there are 40 in the show.
Well, I wanted to see all, and I actually wanted to see all of them, and I was really annoyed that if I wouldn't.
And did you?
Well, I don't know. Did I? I saw a good amount.
And why don't you tell everyone a little bit about that process? We traveled to see the collection.
Well, I mean, I have to say also that if Caitlin weren't by my side, I don't think, I mean, nothing would have happened. We wouldn't be here tonight. But we looked digitally, we looked in warehouses, and really the only criteria which we kept saying was just to fall madly in love with something. The gasp of delight, as we say, is the guide of everything, and that's how we worked. There was we didn't need to know anything. The less you know, the better. In general, we always say. So that's how it was. And then editing over time, over years.
I just want to say that I've been a designer for a really, really long time, and there are a lot of designers in this room, designers and writers and people, right? Just raise your hand. You must be, the whole place is designers, right?
Admit it.
And we think about design in terms of usefulness and shape and color and all of those traditional things, but Maira thought about it in terms of your emotional connection with that object. And I think that that's a really, really important thing for design, to have that quality.
To be manic depressive. You know, I always think that
that's
this
it.
is a manic depressive room because you're supposed to go through a real range of emotion. It's only about emotion. Otherwise, you know, really what's the point, but it's, you know, it's nice to have those once in a while. Emotions, I mean. So.
When Maira was putting together the objects that she wanted to include in Aha to Zigzag, we went out to see the Cooper Hewitt collection, which was stored in an off-site facility, and we were going through the aisles, and she came upon this little porcelain dog, which became the cover of the book. And what did you say when you saw it? How did you describe it? Do you remember?
Did I say that's the cutest dog I've ever seen? That's like I don't know, what did I say?
And it had the most adorable eyebrows
Eyebrows,
she had
right.
ever seen. I had never worked with anyone who come through and look at our collection quite in that way. It was very special. And it's very tiny, but it's big on our book. Gail, you met Nico. You actually met Nico before I met Nico. And you had this initial conversation. And out of that grew this huge collaboration. What was it like to make a film about something that was happening in progress?
I think that the gift of doing a documentary is really about the gift of discovery. You know, this selfish thing about being the director of something like this is that you get to go on this journey, and you never know what you're going to find at the end. So, for example, I asked Maira to draw the clock for the opening of the titles. And I had no idea what Nico's music was going to sound like. And Maira hadn't even written the lyrics at that point. Or maybe you had. Did you write the lyrics by then? So here we were filming the titles with no music. And then it came together, and it's the most perfect combination of drawing and music and lyrics. You would think that we planned it, but we didn't. And I think that that's the thing about art and creativity, is that you're on a path, you're following something, you don't know where it's going to take you. That's the gift to the maker, certainly, but it's also the sense of discovery that I hope that people have when they're looking at a film or a painting or an exhibition or listening to music.
I was really curious, Maira, about the morning samplers that you had done. Had you started those before you started your projects with Cooper Hewitt?
Yeah, I had done them. I had done the morning sampler in 2005, something like that.
And when you came, Cooper Hewitt has a big collection of morning samplers. Were you looking for that, or did you stumble upon it?
I think I stumbled upon everything, and you know, in the nicest way. I don't know what I was looking for. I don't remember. I mean, maybe I said to you, I have to see all the shoes you have.
You did.
I did. You know, I mean, that's for sure. I probably said that, but I don't remember specific. Well, we probably made lists of things that would be in the general categories of. But was morning samplers on the list? I don't know. I mean, I looked at all the fabric. I mean, I love fabrics and textiles, and so clearly that became part of life. But I didn't want to have any preconceived ideas. I really just wanted to you know, dive in.
You know, Maira and I are in a sewing circle together. And there are some members of the sewing circle here tonight. But we meet once a month or so for about 2 hours, and a bunch of women sit around and sew and talk to each other. And so when she told me about the morning sampler, it really made a personal connection to me, because it's so meaningful to it is a healing process. To sew something and to spend time doing something. It does have this incredible healing nature to it. And that personal perspective is what made Maira realize that the morning sampler in the show was a process of healing for people. And it was quite a tradition way back when, with the weeping willow tree and all of those kind of aspects. They, you know, there's the gravestone, this kind of memory, almost like a memory quilt in a way.
I mean, it's about slowing down time, because basically, as I say in the song, that what's the most precious thing? It's time, and we'd never have enough. No matter how much we have, we will never have enough. And so, how do you slow down time? How do you inhabit the moment in a really meaningful way? How do you how do you remember the moment that you're in and know that you're in it? And that's a hard thing to do, actually, maybe as you get older, you can understand how to do that. But everything really in this show for me is an expression of how do you identify the moment of beauty and of joy and stopping time in a way. So it's good to do that.
the two Lincoln objects that we include in the show, the pall, which was cast over Lincoln's coffin, and then his watch, fit very perfectly into Myra's theme. But it wasn't initially what she was interested in, was it?
No, it wasn't at all. No, I was determined to get his hat, and I thought, well, of course, it's the most iconic object, probably in American history, actually, is Lincoln's hat, and why couldn't we have it? It's just a few minutes away. It's so near. It's in Washington. Why wouldn't they bring it over in a lovely box? So when they said no several times, it said, what don't you understand about no? But no was the answer. So but Harry was terrific, and we really had a wonderful time together. And he helped me when I was doing the piece about American history. So the hat became less important when the beautiful objects were available. So
It was.
I just have to say a shout out to Harry.
yeah, Harry is
Oh, my
amazing.
God.
Yeah.
You know, I never met Harry, and I asked him to be in the film, and you're always wondering, how is this going to go? Well, obviously, he's like central casting for the professorial, kindly, very extremely well-spoken curator. I mean, he was
Right.
pretty amazing.
Yeah, and patient. I mean, patience is something that's an extraordinary thing that every curator needs to have, and you learn that as patient, no matter what show you're working on, what project you're working on, the only thing you learn is that you will know nothing the next time, but you need enough time to be able to do it. I mean, do you learn anything from one show to the next? I don't mean that you don't, Caleb, but you know what I mean, that the objective and the problem is a different one. All you know is that you need time to figure it out. So,
Well,
anyway.
one of the things that was sort of incredible for me was that we started out, I had tea with you, you said, I want Lincoln's hat. And I thought, oh no. And what wound up happening is that Harry offered us his watch, and it was like a domino effect. The watch fit into the themes of your show so perfectly. And then he said, by the way, I've been meaning to have it cleaned. And you thought, how extraordinary. We can go watch this watch being taken apart, which you all saw in this beautiful film. And then we were able to have the watch wound and the ticking recorded, and that allowed Maira to start thinking about what to do with Nico. So it all seems so intentional now, but what I'm struck by is that it was so serendipitous. It happened as we were doing this process.
That's what it's, what you said is that you don't know what's going to happen, and if you are open to the idea of things happening, then they might.
This is what you call starting with an empty brain?
Yeah, and continuing with an empty brain. But when you have an empty brain, all of a sudden there's room for something to say, oh. So and also that George Thomas was able to take apart this watch, which, as he said, hadn't been cleaned in 150 years.
So it would tick.
And he didn't know it would tick. And when he finished repairing it and he made it tick, which was really, he wasn't sure, because it was like, surgery on a little, as we say, on a little flea. He said, "Your watch is ready, Mr. Lincoln." It was so incredibly moving. We were in the room. I don't know if you were.
There
were you
were about
crying?
a dozen of
Yeah,
us, and we had to actually stand in the corner on the second story of this house to be quiet while he focused on his work, and then we all got to come downstairs.
And also, and because it's so fragile, it was ticking for how long? Half an hour or so, maybe less, something like that, and probably never again. So the ability to hear the sound, as Harry said, the sound that Lincoln heard, that hasn't happened in 150 years and will never happen again. It was such a move all around. It was an incredible experience. So grateful to all of you, grateful to Caroline for making Harry happy to be here. I don't know. And to Harry. And to American history and to Abraham Lincoln.
I love what you said about how history makes future, and I think that that's what the museum is all about, and that kind of inspiration. Why are we here? What are we learning from this that will help us figure out what to do next? And the whole idea of taking this 150-year-old sound and turning it into modern art and modern music is pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, and the song cycle that Nico did. So if you haven't been in the room, the Lincoln song plays every 10 minutes, and it's so 2.5 2.5 minutes long. It's really beautiful. And then he wrote 5 more songs about different objects in the room that, so I wrote the text, he wrote the music, and it's called, it's called Object Songs, right? The series is called Object Songs.
And you can
hopefully,
buy it online, right?
You can,
Isn't
yeah,
it?
no, it's online now.
available today, apparently.
And hopefully,
Wanna
during
listen to it.
the course of the show, there'll be musical events in the room that will reflect the music that he wrote and other music too. So we're organizing that now.
Are there questions from the audience? Anybody want to come up?
Myra, to your point about duality, the watch essentially, on the one hand, recreated the sort of heartbeat of democracy, and which is a freedom thing, and on the other hand, what you just said about the tyranny of routine and time, which since Galileo's time has been kind of oppressing us. But to me, what comes out of the film, and the way that I read both My Favorite Things and Aha to Zigzag, is almost like the serenade to boredom as a fertile and beautiful and necessary state. So I wonder if you thought, and even, I mean, we say to listen to the clock tick, it's like the ultimate metaphor for boredom, and I wonder if that was a conscious thing for you, and whether your relationship with boredom changed through this project.
I have an intimate relationship with boredom. I'm fighting it all. And actually, boredom is a great inspirer and a great instigator of doing things, because the panic and the fear of being bored, the hysterical fear of being bored, leads you to do things. And I'm sure, that's how, I think that's how many people work, that maybe you're not identifying it as that, but you want to have an interesting time. You want to be excited and happy and amused. You don't want to sit there and be, so you need some time to just be daydreaming and to not know what to do. And then you need to decide what course of action there is to not be bored. And through your life, then that becomes your work. Work prevents you from going insane.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. I hope you all follow Maria's blog, Brain Pickings, one of the best design
Yay.
blogs ever. Anybody else?
When the inscription was found?
Yeah, in the watch. Do you want to?
In 2009. Apparently, Ellen,
Right.
I'll get to you in 1 second. Apparently, the watchmaker's family heard this story over the years, and it was passed down from person to person. And they wrote a letter to the Smithsonian and said, this story has been in the family. Do you know if it's true? And nobody had ever opened up the watch. And in fact, Harry does not think that Lincoln ever knew that that inscription was in there. And I don't know if you could see it. It was a little hard to read, but there's another inscription that says Jeff Davis, right? So the watches of that time were run on whale oil, which is very, very sticky. And so you had to have your watch cleaned every year, because otherwise you had the wrong time, because it was too gummy. It would all get all kind of gummed up. So anyway, they opened the watch and discovered that, in fact, that inscription was there. But it was kind of wonderful that the family had passed down this story. This is my sister, Ellen.
Hi. Congratulations, first of all. And I am Gail's sister, but this, I think, is a question for you, Maria. I'm interested in the music and your collaboration with Nico. It seemed like the song that was in the film was sort of operatic in nature, but it was clearly your lyrics, the sort of simple lyrics, and I'm wondering if you worked with Nico to kind of get some sort of a feel for the music maybe of 150 years ago, or what was that collaboration like?
Nico and I met when he was 12 and I was older than him, it was a love affair. And one of the things that I hope that I learned from working with somebody is that I don't tell them anything other than let's just do this thing and you should do what you love to do, and hope that the intelligence and the conversations that we have about everything would reflect in the music and in our collaboration. So we never spoke about what the music would be. We talked about everything else under the sun, his dog a lot, and other things, and Chinese meals. And then I gave him the lyrics, and then the music is written. So there isn't a conversation about what would be appropriate or what makes sense. It's just about, well, this should be this long, and what do you think? And we've collaborated on a few other pieces. One, a mini song cycle for the Elements of Style, and another one of the Principles of Uncertainty. So it's always been a very fluid, natural connection that not too much has to be said. He's incredibly brilliant and quick, as you can see from, maybe you can see from how he speaks. And anyway, so I just let him do what he does, and ditto, and vice versa.
Unfortunately, there were a lot of things that I had to cut that were kind of wonderful in getting this down to 15 minutes, which I couldn't obviously do since it's 17 minutes, but Nico was telling us the story of how he likes to do personal work as well as some of the big work. You know, he was the composer for Two Boys, which is the youngest composer ever to have an opera at the Metropolitan Opera, which played last year at the Met. And this is a huge, extravagant kind of production, and he likes to balance, in terms of his work, he likes to balance these large projects that involve hundreds and hundreds of people with this more personal work where he can do something quickly and easily without a lot of people, leaning over and stuff like that. So, and it amazes me that we went through this whole process and he didn't record the music until like a week before the opening. It was just, we're all just kind of going, yeah, that stays here.
Congratulations to all of you. It's just been a delightful experience to be up in the room and then here as well and watch the wonderful movie. Maira, I'm so curious about what you said earlier at the beginning about emotion and connecting an emotion with the objects. And I was curious to know, both from maybe Caitlin and the Cooper Hewitt perspective and then from yours, Maira, how are we doing in general in getting acceptance of emotion out there with things, with objects? And just, it's so easy to be here and talk about emotions, and I work in corporate, and it's, we don't talk much about that. So.
Well, how is who doing? How is who doing?
Well, I guess my question really is your intent to put that out in the world? Hey, there's emotion connected to these things. Don't deny it.
Well, no, I don't want to make anybody do anything. But it's not. There isn't an intent to make you, now you haven't felt enough emotion today. You better come in here and feel some emotion. Yeah. Not at all. I'm really responding. I'm telling you my story, and I'm telling you what moves me, and makes me feel happy, and what I think is beautiful, and putting it together in a kind of story that I need to tell, a narrative. Loosely, serendipitous narrative. So I'm only hoping that something will communicate, but I have no idea how somebody else is going to respond, and that's, and I wouldn't even presume.
Yeah.
So
I would
would
presume. Yeah. I do think that this idea that you've introduced of design being about emotion as much as the traditional things that you understand is very relevant, and even more relevant for today. And I don't know if people know it, but I think that they should.
Yeah, I guess that's really the point, is like, I'm delighted to see that get out there, because maybe that's my opinion, is that it can be out there more.
But you won't know what it is. It could be, as I do a lot of paintings of rubber bands, which give me a lot of satisfaction. Yeah. So, but you may think, well, what's going on over there? But maybe there, so it's hard to know what the things are. And people walk into the room. I told Caitlin, I said, "What is this?" They walked in, and 30 seconds later they walk out, and they haven't looked at anything. Those idiots, those animals. And then some people look at something that that look at one thing. They, people gravitate gravitate towards different things, and you say, that's the whole point, that we don't know what's going to happen, that you just have to hope for the best.
And you know, the Selects show was kind of born out of, Carolyn could probably explain, or Caitlin explain better than I, but the Selects show is born out of the idea of introducing a well-known personality to the Cooper Hewitt selection, and then having this very personal, almost eclectic way of curating, and it gets a lot of the unknown pieces in front of viewers that may not necessarily fit into a traditional exhibition category. So the fact that it's miscellaneous is kind of a wonderful idea, because it is vast, 200,000 objects.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you. Thanks. And yeah, Caitlin.
I was just going to say, to that end, I think I can't imagine any other curator coming in and putting a trade card for a wallpaper advertising next to 17th century breeches and Egyptian bear. It fits so smoothly in Maira's installation, and the reasons for it became apparent just through the way that she experienced the objects. I think that everyone that comes through that room has a different experience. Intentionally didn't overwhelm the room with text because she didn't want to demand that you had a particular experience of any one object. So it's a very contemplative space. You can come in and have your own emotion with the objects.
Thank you.
Are there other questions?
Can we go back to the watch for a minute?
Absolutely.
The Jeff Davis significance, what's that all about?
Well, we don't know. As far as Harry didn't mention anything about the Jefferson Davis family writing any notes about
Can you
that.
explain the second inscription?
Oh, it just says Jeff Davis. It doesn't say anything else.
As in the president of the Confederacy.
Yes, that's right. And apparently in this watchmaking, the jewelry store where people would bring their watches to be cleaned, the guy who wrote the first inscription about Fort Sumter being attacked, thank God there's a government, he was the only Union guy in the entire group, according to the story that came down in the family. So it doesn't surprise me that when the watch went back a year later to be cleaned by another watchmaker in the same jewelry store, that somebody else would have a feeling on the other side of the argument.
Right.
Martha?
Why can't the watch be wound for us? Why did you stop winding?
Why couldn't I get the hat? Why could, no. Why? Because it's fantastic. Well, Caitlin, you were there. You say why.
Well, it will wear down, and if we put oil in it, which could damage the watch, which is what would protect it and lubricate the gears, then it would endanger the watch for the future. So the idea is that they want to protect the watch and preserve it for future generations, but they also wanted to be able to create this experience for everyone. So the opportunity to have it recorded for a limited time was sort of the reason that we went and had the watch cleaned. And the Smithsonian Channel recorded the whole process. There was an incredible team of people. It looks very intimate when you're seeing it in Gail's film, but George Thomas worked with like 10 people in his tiny little studio, and then a film crew that was standing outside intermittently moving in. And he was able to take these pieces that were minuscule and down on this cutting board, just take the whole thing apart, and he knew exactly what each piece did. He's in his 80s. He's been doing this almost his entire life, and we were just in awe.
George Washington's watch?
Yes, he's officially the presidential watch repairman.
And he's from Prague, and he's very elegant. It was really great.
And that, I did not shoot that piece of footage. The Smithsonian Channel gave it to us because I didn't come into this until after the watch was cleaned.
Gail, I was wondering, I know you know Maira, but how did you choose the subjects of your films?
Well, I've always been interested in creativity and how creative people work, their process and their ability. I feel that creative people are really risk takers because they don't always know where they're going, and that just has always impressed me. So this idea about filming artists and artisans just seemed like a kind of natural extension of that investigation. And after my work with Martha Stewart for so many years, that idea that creativity can transform your life and have meaning for you and can give your life a kind of value, and that you can teach people about that, is just, it seems like the most natural thing in the world. I think everybody wants to know how to be creative. There's an urge, whether you're a banker or an artist, everybody wants to know how to do that or do it better.
Did you want to?
Yeah, you have time. Great. Well, I feel like the word curate is overused these days, so it's nice to be in this environment where things were really curated. So I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about the process of winnowing down from those 200,000 objects. Like, how much time did you have? I mean, I could see spending years just looking before editing. So did you start with, digital categories? Did you start in a certain location?
Yeah, all of the above. It was, I don't even know what the process, if I had to remember, because we started 4 years ago.
Yeah, right. How did you even start?
I don't know.
We started with binders. We sent Myra binders with pictures of just probably 100,000 objects or something like that. And you were looking through these pictures and you just stuck Post-it notes, like maybe. And then from there, we sort of whittled it down to a couple hundred things. But that wasn't really enough for Myra. She said, now I need to go see some things in person. And we added probably another 100 after going and visiting the collection in person and going through boxes and going through shelves and taking a look, and we took pictures. And Myra's description of everything is, of course, different than the museum's categorization. So a couple of months after our visit, she'd say, but what about the dog with the eyebrows? And then I'd have to go back and figure out what dog she was talking about, which was fun.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
But then there was a sort of very emotional process towards the end when we were actually installing, where once you see things in the space, you start to feel a little differently about how objects interact and whether or not they really fit. And there was a piece which is on the back of My Favorite Things, on the back of the cover, right? The autograph book with the pink ribbon.
Yeah.
And this
It's in the movie too. Yeah.
This was this really beautiful object. It was an autograph book from the 18th century, and Myra had seen it tied with this little pink ribbon, which we used to keep it from falling apart. And she wanted to exhibit it exactly as she'd seen it. So she didn't want the conservators to go anywhere near it to repair the binding. She wanted the ribbon around it. And we brought it to the floor, and we put it in the place that we'd intended, and it just didn't feel right.
And we tried it a few places. So, once everything is edited down, and it really is a process of instinct. I mean, if you don't have your instinct there, then you won't be able to do the job. And it's the same thing about writing text, that you start with a much longer text and really have to edit to what's the most concise, what tells the story with the smallest, the shortest amount of text. In shorthand, that I really want you to understand what I'm thinking and feeling very quickly, without too much explanation. So that was the process of when we were going through it. What are the things that really are the most important? And as you have in your home or anything, you could go through things and say, I cannot be without this, but this, so you let go. It's, it's hard, but you let go of stuff, and then we ended up with the pieces that we have.
I think there were also some objects that Myra knew they were icons of design, and she wanted from the first day she started. So Rietveld's zigzag chair was something I always knew you wanted to be in the show. It had to be in the show. And when it showed up for installation, you'd actually never seen Cooper Hewitt's zigzag chair in person, and it was all wrapped up, and we untied the string, and Myra saw it, and she was totally overwhelmed, as I remember it, just overcome with joy and emotion.
It's so handmade.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And sometimes I would get sick of everything and I'd say there should be nothing in the show. The show should just be an empty room. You can go in
get
and
a
sit,
headache.
right? I don't want anything in there. But because, it's like the Darwin quote, I hate everybody and everything, which welcomes you to the show. It's the first quote you see when you come into the show. And I thought, we live only to make blunders. And so some of the objects in the show are torn or broken or dented, because those are things that are very endearing, very dear, that they've survived and they're heroic.
Speaking of breaking, I did want to mention the lack of continuity.
Yeah, with the hair, you
With
mean?
the hair and the broken arm. At first I thought, well, with all this lack of continuity, maybe I have to put the film together first just using all the pieces of Maira with her regular arm, and then with the broken arm. But then I couldn't tell the story because it just didn't work out that way. And then she decided to grow her hair out. I remember Martha telling me once from being on TV, I can never cut my hair. I always have to have exactly the same hair for continuity.
I remember you told me you can't.
Myra's like, no continuity. I'm growing my hair out. I'm going to let myself go gray. So you notice every single time she's in the film, her hair is a different color.
Right.
So breaking rules and breaking arms seem to have gone together in this film.
But it really speaks to how long it takes to put together an exhibition. I think, even Maira was sort of astounded by how long a process it was.
And also, I want to thank all the curators and the installers and the what are the other names of things that people do here? Registrars. Amazing kindness and patience, and really wanting to help make the show something that would make everybody happy, that would make me happy, that would work, so it really was an extraordinary, very, very amazing, and I'm really grateful for all the wonderful patience and kindness of all, and talent of all and intelligence. So thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
So you're going to sign books now? Maira is going to sign books in the back room over there, and Tatley is very excited to give you temporary tattoos while you're waiting. We hope you all join us. Thank you for coming.